Well, here we are, ladies and gentlemen. And as the countdown concludes, we find ourselves where we should be, where we were meant to be, where we've spent all Tuesday waiting to be. 7 PM, full board vision, live blindfold chess. And as you can see, we've got a game about to start with special guest and friend of the stream, Tim Smith 121. But before that game commences, I'd just like to give a few shout outs. My marketing team, hands down, have been working so hard this week. So I just wanted to give them a shout out. They know their stuff. They really know what they're on about. The slogans they've been throwing around, the colour schemes they've been designing. I mean, I take my hat off to them. So shout outs to those. And also to my graphic design team. They've been hard at work. Recruiting, actually. Yeah. So thanks for that work recruiting. Yeah, they're going to grow. They're going to double in size. Can you believe that? Just imagine what it's going to look like when we've got twice as many people working on it. It's going to be insane. Right, well, you know what we do on this stream. We don't mess around. We don't waste time with idle and inane banter. We get straight into it. And we play live blindfold chess. So here we go. Let's have a good game. E4. Best by test, according to Bobby Fischer. Right, E5. Okay, so we're in E4, E5 territory. Knight C6. Okay, the Italian. I will essay the Italian for once. It's not my usual move, to be honest. It's not like I play this in almost 99% of all full board vision live stream blindfold games. F6. I should have done some work on this because I think we faced this last week. F6. Okay, so what should we do about F6? What should we do? Stream beats. Harris Heller. I think we should just kind of ignore that F6 is a bit unusual and just try to finish our development. So first off, I think we should just castle. So let's do that. Knight E7. Okay, so the knight has gone to E7. Knight G7. Okay, so the bishop on F8 is kind of locked in at the moment. The knight on E7 protects the other knight on C6. Okay, well, maybe we just play knight C3. So I don't see a threat at the moment. Where's this knight want to land on E7? It's not going to go to E4. Is it going to G6? That was D5, by the way. So it can't go to D5. That square is covered thrice. And it's probably not going to jump to G6 here. And off goes the knight. Okay, knight B4. Okay, so knight B4, and there's now a bunch of pieces attacking D5, right? I've got 3 pieces attacking D5. My opponent's got 2. C2 is also attacked, but it's currently defended by the queen. Feels like we should have something here. I'm going to have a think. Not sure what this knight's doing. Maybe I'm missing something. But maybe we should just play bishop e3 and just develop. Maybe we should play rook e1. Or another move that we've kind of got if we move our f3 knight is queen h5 check. I mean, knight g5 looks a bit silly, but that could just be a straight up very good move. I don't know. That seems a bit odd. Right, I think maybe D5 is on the way. Is that the idea? Maybe that's the idea. Takes. So d5, hang on, that would then be protected 3 times, but it's actually defended 4 times. Oh no, I've got to put a d pawn here. Okay. Ah, so maybe I should be looking at d4. Maybe that's the idea. Yeah, okay, I can't move my bishop out. Should have seen that. Right, d4. I mean, my king is safe here on g1, I think. So I'm just going to go d4. Now, should have made that decision quicker. But it's blindfold. Can't see the pieces. Okay, this is a very unusual position. And that's good only for our opponent. Because unusual positions are difficult to visualize. Or difficult to understand is probably more precise. Okay, so let's not lose track of the pawn structure. So the idea is if they take on d4, I mean, we could actually capture back with the queen, and that might not be so stupid. That might not be so. They get knight c6 at the tempo against the queen. If ed, which is the move I'm expecting, I don't think you can allow this and open the f file and allow. I mean, we are threatening to capture on e5, right? To take twice on e5 and win a pawn because the c6 knight has ventured off to b4. It no longer guards e5. So for that reason, I'd expect de to be played. Whoa, d5. Look at this square of pawns. Feel the tension. d5 was the idea. Now then, ridiculous, but can we sack our bishop? We could then trade queens. King takes. I don't think we can do that, but we can play bishop b5 check, but then we'll be met with c6. Oh, that will be met with c6. So we've got 2 choices, I guess. We can drop our bishop back to b3, where it does a decent job. But then they might capture on e4, but that square is guarded, so maybe that's okay. Or we can take on d5 and allow knight d5. But then we could do knight d5. Sorry, this is a line, I think. So bear with me here. So take on d5, knight takes d5, knight takes d5, knight takes d5. And then we can play this move. We can capture d takes e5, which might win a pawn because it puts a second attack on this knight, which would need defending with a move like bishop e6. I don't think there are any abracadabra moves in the position after de. So I'm going to go ahead and do the trades. Am I worried about e4 coming? Shouldn't be. I mean, that is a pawn sacrifice. And already we're 2.5 minutes down on the clock. But it is their turn. Okay, so what just happened? Knight takes d5. Yeah, that's what we expected. Okay, so this makes things a little different now. We could take here straight away, but then knight takes c3 would attack our queen, and I don't really like the look of that. So I kind of want to free our position up and take that possibility away. So knight takes d5. I think it has to be played. Otherwise, we're a piece down. Yeah, okay, so now de. I'm discovering a second attack on the knight. Looks like it wins a pawn. Just to recall, I've got a bishop here, and I've got a knight here. I've got a king on g1. I've got a rook on f1. This will just open the game up. I think it has to be played. Okay, so now our pawn structure is looking like this. I'm not counting this pawn, although I should, because it's gonna disappear. And the opponent's pawn structure is looking like this. All right, so we can draw it like this. We've just gone a pawn up, and I don't think fe is possible because we'll just play queen d5, winning a piece. So, as I see things, it's probably bishop e6. Then we take on f6. Yeah, but then queen f6 isn't possible because it would hang the piece. So I'm thinking bishop e6. I mean, I think that maybe it doesn't have to be played, but that's the natural move to defend with development. You know, otherwise, I guess you could play c6 to defend the knight. Then I would definitely trade. Would I definitely trade? Anyway, it certainly allows that possibility to leave black with an isolated pawn. So for me, it's bishop e6. Then I take on f6. And I think that does create a threat of taking on g7 and going 2 pawns up. So maybe, but if gf, that looks a bit risky, because then there's rook e1, which would pin the e6 bishop to the king. So I think the center opening now probably favors white. But let's see what happens. Let's remember what's going on. So pawn structure for our esteemed opponent. And we got this. Okay, piece placement. We have a queen on d1, bishop on c4, knight on f3, and rooks on h1 and f1, and also a dark square bishop on c1. Our opponent has dark square bishop on f8. Let's go bishop on c8. There's a knight on d5, the queen on d8, the king is still on e8, and rook's on h8 and a8. Hang on, there's something missing there. Why have I got an extra piece? I haven't got an extra piece. Oh, sometimes you confuse yourself. Huh? I haven't got an extra piece. Okay, great. I mean, I'd rather have an extra piece, but you know. Okay, so what's the essence of the position? Finish development, I think. And if possible, I mean, develop the rooks to the center. This looks like a really nice posting for the rook, especially as so c6 played. Okay, now I guess that means that after ef you can play queen f6. But I think, I mean, in that position we've got a couple of threats. We can try to win a pawn on d5 by trading knights, but we also got rook e1 check, which looks difficult to deal with. So let's go. If this knight could move with some kind of menace and threaten a queen trade or something like that, it might work. But currently our queen's protected by our rook, so we're not bothered about that. And the knight on d5 is actually quite far away from our king on g1, so we're all good. And otherwise, I don't think a knight b6 that could have been a thing, attacking the bishop c4. All right, now we've got choices. I mean, we can even play bishop g5 here, which attacks the queen, I think. Because we've got a knight on f3, protecting that square. We can play rook e1. So it's interesting, rook e1, probably bishop e6. But that'd be interesting, because then bishop g5, the queen might start to get a little bit bothered. So I might throw rook e1 check in first. I don't think it stops us playing bishop g5. All right, time is getting low, and it's of the essence. Okay. Bishop e7, okay. Now I kind of feel like bishop g5 at least puts the pressure on and helps us develop. There's no way in which it can be captured. I don't see an aggressive move with the queen. And I think the problem is actually that once the queen moves somewhere, let's say d6, we can trade, and then the bishop's actually hanging because it can't be can't be won back by the queen. So, I mean, I'm not calculating fully here because I don't really have the time. And I think bishop g5 is just a good move. Anyway, it feels like a natural move, so I guess it's queen b2, but that can't be. That feels like the queen is going to be offside on b2. It doesn't threaten any pieces, which might be a justification for grabbing this pawn while the king is still in the center. But I don't think it can be. And I guess on queen b2 we just play bishop takes d5, cd, and then even rook e7. Check. Queen d6, okay, as expected. It's probably the move. Okay. I don't know, yeah, okay, so let's just do it. Let's just do it. Queen d6 does hit h2, but currently there's nothing else hitting h2. What happened to the light square bishop? It's still on c8, yeah. Okay. So black is going to get the bishop pair, but I don't think for very long, because we are going to take bishop e6. Now bishop e6 actually hits the queen as well, even though, yeah, it hits the queen, doesn't it? And we could play rook e6, which is a check. We should consider that as well, because okay, that will be met with king f8. Oh, where's our queen? Our queen's on d1. There might be a stronger move than bishop e7 here. Anyway, let's play bishop e7. So what just happened? We still got a knight on f3. Okay, bishop e7. Okay, so right now what we've got to deal with are these guys. And a queen here. And a pawn structure that is looking like this. That's 5 pawns. We've got 6. But we also got a rook on e1, rook on a1, queen on d1, knight on f3. Aha, so the knight on f3 is going to have to get out of the way to allow a queen h5 or something like that. But currently, I mean, I really want to play queen d5 if this queen somehow doesn't defend the d5 pawn. But we've got a chance. We're low on time, and endgames are always hard to convert under these conditions, but I think we're in a good position. Okay, what will do the worst or the most damage? Okay, we can play queen d5. I guess black wants bishop h3 with a mate threat. Maybe queen d5 is just a strong move. There's no bishop e6. And it covers the f7 and g8 squares. There are also discoveries, right? There are discovered checks, but I think queen d5 looks good. So I'm going to go in. There's also knight e5. There's a lot of moves which look decent. I'm going to choose queen d5. And I'm expecting bishop h3 as a way to develop and threaten mate. Queen takes g2 mate. We've always got knight h4, which will hit the queen while defending the mate, which is a typical idea in those kinds of positions. There's another move as well that we could play, actually, if bishop h3 lands on the board, which is bishop g5, which is a check, and which interferes with the queen's pin on the g-pawn. Then we could take the bishop. I guess it's not a free piece because at the end of that line they've probably got h6 to win our bishop, but it feels like it wasn't gonna work. And there we go. Okay, short game, difficult position to be in here, and fair resignation. Let's have a look. Let's go to the analysis board. So let's have a look at this opening. I wonder if it's got a name. Knight c6. We play against the Italian. f6. Let's have a look. A few games in the League Chess database. Apparently d4 is the most common move. Nothing the Masters database. Novelty. Oh, I castled, right? I castled. d4 makes a bit more sense, arguably. So I castled. Knight g7. Okay. Now, I kind of feel like might have been an idea to get the bishop out before committing knight e7. Or maybe the knight heading to g6 and then everything's okay. So knight c3. Now this I feel probably now is the time to bring this knight out of the way so that we can play bishop c5 or even bishop b4. Oops, excuse me. So knight g6, bishop b4. If black had like 5 moves, bishop c5 or b4, castles, and then probably d6, maybe queen e7 and bishop e6, something like that. Try and contest this bishop. Knight b4. The idea is d5, which I like, central expansion or a central push. But unfortunately, I think because white can play d4 and open the d file, I think it's just one tempo too slow. I think this perhaps loses a pawn. So Engine is actually giving this line e takes d5. Yeah, that's what we did. E d5. Yep. Knight takes e5. Knight takes e5 is forced, and it's quite hard to defend from here. c6 was the top move. Good one. Apparently stronger than bishop e6. Not quite sure why. Probably because the bishop is not looking good on the e file here. c6, and this position looks quite difficult to defend now after queen f6. But I mean, what else? gf, I guess. But that looks like the pawn cover for the king eventually on the king's side is going to get shattered. So there's a question where to put the king in this position. So queen f6, rook e1, bishop e7, bishop g5, queen d6. Apparently the engine is recommending bishop e7 here even, so why is that? Ah, that's clever. The knight's pinned. Didn't see that. The knight's pinned to the queen, so there's no need to actually trade minor pieces here. The engine likes to keep the pieces on, but still this is perfectly fine. Bishop takes, queen takes d5, and the line that I had in mind was after bishop h3 you can either go knight h4, probably go knight g5, but the thing I was thinking was you could go bishop g5, and after the king moves you can take this bishop, but you probably wouldn't. There's probably something better. Okay, good games. That one was that was interesting with this f6. Interesting move. I think black has to work quite carefully after this move to make sure that they get developed and they don't regret having pushed f6, which is the natural square for the knight. So it'll be interesting to see how this one develops, and I'll just do a bit of work looking at that later on. All right, let's go again. So give you the initial scene back. Right. So this is the part of the stream where I have to pad for time. And as you can see, I'm an expert in that. It's nice to be back playing some Blindfold after a rather disastrous attendance at the Kilkenny International Chess Masters, where I scored 3 of 6 but suffered 2 awful losses. Really bad losses, painful ones, you know, like waking up in the middle of the night, seeing the position. Not quite that bad, but all right. Knight f3, love it. Okay, well, let's go the Reti. Let's go with a knight f6, symmetrical. So knight f3, the first move by white, is a very flexible move. It can transpose to all sorts of openings, but it also has a lot of independent value. And here, g3, so this is, I don't know where we are in this opening. Maybe some kind of King's Indian attack, or the Gleck system, I think. Maybe that's with e4 already, so I don't know. This is going to be interesting. So what do we do? I'm kind of tempted to fianchetto my bishop as well. But yeah, okay, let's do that. And if, in the case of bishop g2, bishop g7, now I'm going to play for c6, d5, if allowed, to try to blunt this bishop. d3 played. Can we play d5 now? I think we should castle, and let's just hang on. Don't like the look of e4, and followed by an e5 hitting our knight. So I'm gonna throw d5 in, just so that e4 isn't playable. Then we're going to castle. We're probably going to play c6. We're going to try and push e5. So this is our our plan. And then we'll think about what to do with our queenside pieces. Okay, so white is castled. Okay, it's strategic. It's a strategic game, and it's already getting difficult to see what to do because it's an unfamiliar position. So maybe bishop f5. Well, actually, let's just castle. So let's do that because we know we're going to do that. So let's put that on the board. A good rule in Blindfold, or a good habit to form. If there's a good move on the board and you see it and you're sure of it, just play it. Because you've got to keep playing fast. Time is of the essence. All right, so this position is kind of interesting. So we're looking like we're playing copycat over here on the king side, with both kings facing each other, rooks, bishop, knight, and this pawn structure looking like so. But there's something unusual in terms of the pawn structure. So we've got d5 and they got d3. Bishop e3 played. So these bishops now kind of raking the board. I feel like we should play c6, but maybe we could play e5. But what we don't want to do is end up with our queenside pieces undeveloped for the rest of time. But I don't think we can play the natural c5 knight c6 because this bishop's going to be very good. Hang on. Here's something interesting. That pawn. If our bishop could just teleport to b2, that would trap a rook. So actually, I think we can play. I think we can play knight g4 here and rob the bishop pair, right? Or maybe force bishop f1, bishop c1, and come back to f6 and claim a draw. I think we can play knight g4 and get the bishop pair. So hang on. Yeah, we can. There's a pawn on e2, so this doesn't hit the queen does not hit our knight, but irrelevant because the bishop actually protects it. Odd thing to visualize this pawn structure. Anyway, we are taking too long. Knight g4. Okay, so what do we want? I guess we want maybe c6, maybe bishop e6, knight d7. I guess we want e5 first. I mean, if we're allowed to play e5, we should just go ahead. e5, bishop e6, c6, knight d7, maybe get to c5. But first, we just want to explore whether we're going to be allowed to whip out bishop b2. win an exchange. I mean, now sometimes you question whether it's worth giving up your dark square bishop for a rook, if you can, because that's a very important defender of your dark squares when you've committed to this kind of pawn structure. You know, and those dark squares are important. They're in front of your king. So let's see where the game goes. C3. Okay, right, get it. So C3 played to block the bishop's attack, but now I think we should go ahead and whip that bishop off. That's what we did. That's what we did it for. And I guess, yeah, FE will probably be played. I think it's the only way. And then this opens up the rook. But that's okay, I think. Okay, so now there's no bishop g4. Oh, there is. That pins the knight. So maybe we can play bishop g4. But I think we should play e5. Maybe what we did, maybe actually just help black. I'm not sure. We've got the bishop pair, so we can't moan at that. Now then, e5 is now playable because it's defended. So I think we should go ahead and play it. So where are the pawns at? I think they're right here. And hang on. No. They're like so, aren't they? Did we just double the... We just doubled the white pawns. We just doubled the white pawns, right. We traded a pair of bishops. We didn't trade any pawns. Okay, that was important. So the knight has gone to d2. So these knights are facing off, or, you know, protecting one another. Okay, so we've got this to be aware of, that's the pawn structure that we're playing against. So what do? We can actually play bishop g4. Do we want to do that? Maybe we do. I mean, we might get hit with h3, so maybe we should just play bishop e6. Bishop e6. Queen d7. And play for bishop h3. Question where to put our b8 knight. There's nowhere to go. But, I mean, if we manage to get bishops off, then we can probably play c5 and knight c6. Because once this monster bishop is no longer on this diagonal, we won't really feel compelled to play c6. We'd probably play the more active c5 and gain some space in the center. All right, 6 minutes 14, plays 7:31. Bishop h6. Now that's, sorry, pawn to h3. That's interesting because now queen d2 will actually attack that pawn and probably king h2. That's where we were going anyway, so it does leave us with a knight that we don't know where it's going. But maybe we can go knight a6, knight c7 after we played the move c6. If they play king h2, which they usually have. Okay. There's also the idea of f5, f4, but coming up against the g3 and e3 pawns, that probably doesn't work. So c6. Maybe we want to be playing d5. Maybe that's what we want to be doing. Because that hits a knight, and if they trade, we take back. That leaves them with these double isolated pawns. Okay, now the center is going to be closed. I think after d4 we can play after d4 we can play e4, hit the knight. Yeah, it leaves us with pawns on light squares, which is not so good having this light square bishop. But I think it does leave white with this pawn structure and a kind of the e3 and e2 squares, which are these two. The pawns there will be weak probably for the rest of the game, hopefully. And it does block this bishop in, so let's go. If I'm seeing the pawn structure correctly, I think it looks like this over there in the center and the queen side. And for us, it looks like this. So, nope, that guy is on h3. Let's not forget that. Okay, so right now the g3 pawn is protected by the king. Okay, so now the knight jumps into g5. Isn't the knight trapped? If we play h6, it can't jump on h3, that's occupied. It can't take on f7, because that's defended twice. But it can take on e6. Okay. Fair. Now this is interesting actually, so we probably don't need to play h6, but I'm not really worried about this, because we can capture, we can contest the open f file, and then we're always going to have this move e5. Maybe not. Okay, we've got no choice. That bishop's gone. It's going to get traded. Okay, but we can take the queen, I guess, if we wanted to. Okay, let's maneuver the knight around to d3. Then maybe we get the knight to g5, where it might sink into... probably won't get to f3. Knight g5, strong move. I mean, in some sense, I don't want to get rid of this bishop, because I quite like my bishop and queen lining up on the h3 pawn. But, that said, we have got all pawns on light squares, not all pawns, but plenty of pawns in the center on light squares, and our light square bishop doesn't have any maneuverability around that. So it's an interesting question. Is this a good position for the bishops? The bishop pair. So it's not really an open board, which is normally where the bishop pair kind of works well. So maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Now's a big decision to be made. With the f-pawn or with the queen. If we play with the queen, we preserve our pawn structure. If we play with the f-pawn, we might have the option of e5. But that really only serves to straighten up, or threaten to straighten up, black's pawns, which we don't really want. So I think we should take with the queen. Let's take with the queen. Okay, so what's going on in terms of minor pieces? We've got 1, 2 minor pieces. They got 1, 2. No, hang on, we got rid of that bishop. The knight's here. Okay, so we've got a slight lead in development. We've got a slightly improved pawn structure. It's going to be one of those maneuvering games. Like, where does a knight belong? I'm not sure. I'm not sure at all. Queen b3. Okay, hitting b7. That's good. Yeah, I'm tempted to play queen e7. Why? Protect b7. Bring the knight to d3. It feels like it wants to be there. Are they going to play c4? I think they might. Oh well, I think we've got to deal with that when it comes. So, my understanding, there's a knight on b1, there's a bishop on g2. There's a pawn structure that looks like this, and that looks like this. We've got a knight on a6, which we want to swing round. We've got queen on e7, bishop on g7, rook on f8, rook on a8. They've got queen on b3, rook on a1, rook on f1, and a king on g1. c4, good move. Good move. Okay, attacking our center. So I think what we should do is we should prepare to recapture on that square with a knight. Is this going to be hanging? Right, but from there we attack e3. So I mean, this feels like the right plan. Rather than recapturing the pawn and maybe trying to play something like rook c8 to open up the c file, maybe that was better. Or, you know, anticipating that the c file is going to open after c takes d. And we could have played instead rook c8. And then this rook may have been able to land somewhere at some point in the future. But I think this is the worst piece in the position. Oh, we had knight b4 actually. Queen e7 had made knight b4 possible. Still, not sure where the knight goes from b4. After a move like a3. So, knight c7 looks fine. A minute and a half down. Let's see what happens. Closed game, good choice. Good choice for Blindfold. It's hard to see what's going on. I can just about make out the pawn structure and what it kind of means. c4 pawn break was a good shout. I feel this knight needs to get into the game via d2. And maybe double rooks on the f file might be a thing that black can do. Long-term pressure. Doesn't threaten anything immediately, but it probably does constitute some kind of initiative. As it stands, we may even want to take on c4 and plant the knight on d5. Because the attack on e3 looks annoying. Oh, and that would be actually if we take now, queen takes, we can play knight d5, which we wanted to do anyway, and I think that the rook landing on f4 just helps because the rook will have to retreat unless they give up an exchange, and it can't retreat to f3 from where it would defend e3 because we've got a pawn on e4. So after that we should be able to take this and then pinch the bishop or trade the bishop, winning a pawn. I guess perhaps the problem is that if we go here, then there's rook takes d5, which hits our queen. So there is. Okay, so we just need to deal with that first. So maybe there's just bishop h6 with the same, and then taking on e3 as a check. Right, so bishop h6. Right, so what's this rook gonna do? I don't see. Yeah, bishop h6. Is it a blunder? I think it's the move. Hitting the rook f4. When the rook goes somewhere, where does it go? I mean, it could maybe come to g4, h4. I don't think it has a long-term future on either of those squares. You don't want to go to f2 because then actually it gets pinned to the king. Okay, rook h4. I think now we just take here, it's a check. And I think we also grab this e4 pawn, d4 pawn. Okay, let's just think about this though, because okay, I think we've got to do it. We've only got 1 minute left, so bishop e3, check. Actually, what's very interesting is that only the g3 pawn defends this rook. So actually, if king h1, we've got bishop f2. Oh, queen e3, full board vision, absent. All right, we dropped a piece. Third rank was protected. Okay, and we just got rid of their weak pawn for our excellent bishop. Right, we need to work. Blunder. Right, what can we actually do here then? Okay, so now d5 is even weaker. So let's bring in the knight. Okay, that was well played. Missed this completely. Now we've got to work. We've got to work to just play moves fast. Remember that we've got contact here. That was advanced. Okay, okay. Let's not blunder any more pieces. I guess we can play knight g5 because that's defended. It is attacked, but it's defended. And then, so what does the pawn structure look like now? I think it's like this. And like this. Okay. Oh no, there's a bishop on c1. We just lost a whole piece. A second piece. Terrible. Could be resigns. Guess we should try f6 then after queen takes g5. Maybe they won't see it. Hope chess. It's never good to be in that position. Queen g5. All right, wasn't... Hang on, there's no bishop on c1. Come on, Josh. There's also no knight here, so what's going down? Where's that knight? It's on d2. It's on d2. Forgot about that. The knight's on d2. Okay. Now then. Okay, what can we do about this situation? Maybe we can play f5. Maybe we have to play f5. Maybe it's kind of forced. And then just double on the f file and hope for the best. I mean, we've got no chance of playing f4. Oh, but hang on. f4, gf. We just take the rook. So actually, well, no, we don't. We need to get our knight out of the way. So maybe there's some tricks. We should have left the knight on e6. I mean, we probably should have resigned because we're in a tight spot here. There's a knight on d2. Okay. All right. Well, we're in the time scramble. g4 played. Okay. Interesting, because now we've got f4. Have we? Actually, we've got this. And then we can play a move like knight f3. Looks stupid, but it uncovers an attack on the rook now, right? Because the move played was g4. H takes knight f3. Rook f3, queen h5, probably rook h3. Oh, but then there's queen d1. All right, rook g4. That makes a lot of sense. Obviously. Okay, so now the f file is open. So we could take on f1, but we definitely don't want to do that. This is attacked twice, so we need to deal with that problem. So that's how we'll deal with it. f4 is now available though, right? We can't play it right now. Oh, we can. Interference. Oh, knight f4, rook f4, queen takes g5. And there's no queen f4 because of rook f4. Okay, so probably they'll trade rooks. And then we got knight f4 incoming. Okay. Aha, which is a long way from the d2 knight. We've got a chance here because we're in a time scramble. 12 seconds remaining. Knight f4 is what we want to do. The queen went there. The queen's on the rook's on g5. Okay, let's bring the knight back to the blunder square, or what's it called? The horrible square. The worst square on the board for the knight. g7. Do we want to trade these rooks? I mean, we've got to do something with our position. Let's just try and remember the pawn structure while it's not our go. Okay, let's go like this. Is the pawn just going to march down and then they're going to destroy us? We can play rook h4, right? After h4. h5. We can capture it with a knight. It's getting very low on time here. Oh, unlucky. The game was definitely for the taking. But we got very lucky there. Time scramble. Tough position. Unlucky. I think it was it was a deserved loss for me. Let's have a look at the analysis. Analysis scene. Let's have a quick look. We dodged a bullet. So this was an interesting opening. So knight f3, knight f6. Okay, so we've got this symmetrical thing going on. E3 played. I thought that signaled that E4 might be on its way. Also, it opens the bishop to come to G5 or perhaps F4. Played D5. Castles, castles, bishop E3. I thought knight G4 was a fairly decent move. At least it's got an idea associated with it, which is to pick off the E3 bishop, which we duly did. And its pawn structure is probably not good long term. It's not the end of the world, but somehow these double pawns on the e-file feels like it's going to be difficult to straighten them out. E4 we'll just trade, and then we've got isolated pawns on the e-file. At any rate, I think Tim Smith 121 found a very good way to work the pawns and to push the pawns with the eventual c4 break. All right, so what's going on here? Let's take stock. Black has the bishop pair. They've got an undeveloped knight, so they've not yet finished their development. They've got a very healthy pawn structure with this sort of central control. But actually, there's just a pawn hanging here on e-file. All right, it's our turn, so it's not hanging yet. White has got a little bit less space in the center due to the double pawns on the e-file, which is kind of limiting the scope of the pieces just a little bit. And the knights sort of protecting one another. I guess, yeah, queen can come to b3, which is what happened, and then maybe double rooks on the f-file and bring this knight into the game somehow. Maybe via, I don't know, maybe with an e4 idea somehow. But it looks like black's probably got the edge here. Knight a6, so we trade. Okay, what was that all about? Queen e7? I'm not quite sure what that was for, to be honest. I'm not sure why I did that. Ah, right, so the idea of eventually bringing the knight to d3. Sorry, to e6, but why not just play knight c7 straight away? Engine likes rook b8. You're going to push the queenside pawns. That's a great idea. Okay, c4, great move. c7, and now I think white's already back in the game. All right, were it not for this horrendous blunder, and now white's still winning. You know what? It's a good move here as well. Bishop g5. And the rook is trapped. g4, h4, h5. Rook g4, h5. The rook is trapped. But I went and took on e3, which is a terrible move. And now, okay, the engine is giving +1.5, so it's not a complete disaster. So that black can probably play on. And now, in fact, it says it's pretty much even. In fact, it gives black an edge. How is that? How does black have an edge here? f5? Okay, I played knight, chose knight g5, but apparently f5 is a very strong move. I guess just threatening f4, and then eventually an f3. So I think if you imagine so f5, what they're going to do? Let's just say white passes just to demonstrate the threat. King h8. Is f4 not a threat here? Okay, apparently no. There's rook takes f4, of course, right? So that's not going to work. So, interesting. So I'm not quite sure why the engine is giving black a slight edge after f5. Maybe it just likes the strong pawn structure. I'm not sure. It's hard to understand. Anyway, that's not what happened. I played knight g5. Rook f1, f5. Okay, now I started getting... Oh, look what we missed. Knight f3 check. Why did we... I felt like I needed to take on g4 first, but there was no need. So blindness. Knight f3. It's probably winning. It's probably winning the game. Knight f3, I guess. So if you try bishop f3, queen h4, and now we're in this situation where black has a rook for 2 mana pieces, which usually is not very good. The 2 mana pieces usually outplay the rook. But in this exact position, the bishop is attacked, so it's going to have to retreat to save itself, I think. And just this pawn center is just so strong. It's going to push through. It's going to hit the queen. Wow. Okay, so just for example, so bishop g2. I can even pinch a pawn here on g4 because the h3 pawn is pinned. I expect f4 is also quite good. Actually, f4 you can just be captured, so that's not very good. So, okay, so if we were to take on g4, okay, because the pawn is going to advance with a check. Or maybe we're going to capture here. And then we've got 2 connected passes. So interesting endgame. But that's not what happened. We took on g4 instead, and now rook takes g4. We retreated our knight because it was attacked twice by the heavies. Queen h6. Wow, and the d4 pawn is hanging here. So we could have played knight d4. Should have seen that because I was aware the pawn structure was looking like this. And then it's a different situation because here, 1, 2, 3, 7 pawns for black versus 5. So we've got 2 pawns back for the piece. I mean, it does look like we're about to get hammered here on the king side. But probably the rook sack is not working just yet. This bishop kind of blocked out for the moment, and this knight is also unable to, get into the game through any quickly through an active path, right? The knight's path is going to be, I don't know, especially with this knight here. This knight doesn't have much mobility, so I can understand why this is evens. But we played knight g7, which is a horrible place to land a knight, but it was going to f5. And then we got h4, rook f7, and unfortunately the game ended there. It's a time scramble. It's hard to find a move. But I think white has a great position. It's an extra piece, but I think black's got any compensation here. Game probably could have just continued trade rooks. And now this knight probably wants to get into the game. Maybe via f. Can you play knight f1, knight e3? Is there a quicker? What's the quickest win? What about rook f4? I feel like this knight really needs to get into the game somehow. I guess now we can play h5, right? Now we can play this because this ain't possible. You just get captured. Yeah, and stuff's just getting traded here, isn't it? This looks really hard to defend. Engine saying you can grab the pawn. Wow, that's very brave. It's rook g5, and now this knight's going nowhere. It's hard to defend it a second time. Maybe you could play king h8 to try and unpin. But I even feel, I mean, you wouldn't do this, but I even feel like this position is not going to be that great. All right, black does have an edge there. Okay, but no need to do that, obviously. Just try to bring the bishop in somehow. Bring the knight round. Can't do that just yet, but yeah, unfortunate. The inexorable march of time, the chess clock ticking, the time scramble. But good games, very good games. That wasn't the final position, of course. Where were we? Here. here. All right, it was a couple of fun games. Got very lucky in the second one there to win on time. But once again, big thanks to special guest Tim Smith 121. Always fun to play some live blindfold chess. And, you know, it's every Tuesday, Thursday, 7 o'clock. So, you know, be here. Be here and enjoy it. Be here and enjoy it. So I'll catch you next time on Full Born Vision, Thursday, 7 o'clock, where we'll be playing some live blindfold chess. And yeah, have a good couple of days. See you later.